A devotional for March 25, a reflection on My Utmost for His Highest by Oswald Chambers. And you can find the daily link to these devotionals at utmost.org. Today, the key text is John 3:27 through 30, and we will focus today on verse 29. And this again is John the Baptist speaking to others about Jesus. To this, John replied, "A person can receive only what is given them from heaven. You yourselves can testify that I said, I am not the Messiah, but am sent ahead of him." Verse 29, "The bride belongs to the bridegroom. The friend who attends the bridegroom waits and listens for him, and is full of joy when he hears the bridegroom's voice. That joy is mine, and it is now complete. He must become greater, I must become less." And the devotional today is titled Maintaining the Proper Relationship. Goodness and purity should never be traits that draw attention to themselves, but should simply be magnets that draw people to Jesus Christ. If my holiness is not drawing others to him, it is not the right kind of holiness. It is only an influence which awakens undue emotions and evil desires in people and diverts them from heading in the right direction. A person who is a beautiful saint can be a hindrance in leading people to the Lord by presenting only what Christ has done for him, instead of presenting Jesus Christ himself. Others will be left with this thought, what a fine person that man or woman is. That is not being a true friend of the bridegroom. I am increasing all the time. He is not. To maintain this friendship and faithfulness to the bridegroom, we have to be more careful to have the moral and vital relationship to him above everything else, including obedience. Sometimes there is nothing to obey, and our only task is to maintain a vital connection with Jesus Christ, seeing that nothing interferes with it. Only occasionally is it a matter of obedience. At those times when a crisis arises, we have to find out what God's will is. Yet most of our life is not spent in trying to be consciously obedient, but in maintaining this relationship, being the friend of the bridegroom. Christian work can actually be a means of diverting a person's focus away from Jesus Christ. Instead of being friends of the bridegroom, we may become amateur providences of God to someone else, working against him while we use his weapons. This one lines up nicely with the one from March 24, where it talks about he must increase and I must decrease. And again, here what we're talking about is not allowing ourselves to become more important than pointing someone to the light of Christ. I think of this especially with churches that have a dynamic pastor, maybe a dynamic worship leader. There are some churches that are pastor-led churches in the sense that the size of the congregation is more a reflection of the person who's leading than actually what's being done. And we have to be very, very careful with that. Think of it this way. If a pastor leaves a church and the work of the church doesn't continue, what was the work of the church in the first place? And it's true for all of us, especially now. We all have a platform of some sense. I'm using a platform right now, and I'm using the connections that I have to try to share a word. But if that platform ever grows to the point where it becomes about me or about you, then we're not doing it right. And the last line of this devotional is especially convicting. Instead of being friends of the bridegroom, we may become amateur providences of God to someone else, working against him while we use his weapons. If we point someone in our direction rather than in the direction of Christ, what's going to happen when we stumble? What's going to happen when we fall? What's going to happen when we are unavailable, when we make a mistake, when we sin? Then the message is lost. We should only be a conduit, a friend of the bridegroom in our work. We should never be the end-all, be-all. But we should absolutely continue to do the work, making sure that we are just remaining in Christ. As this devotional said, it's not always about a particular act of obedience, but just being in relationship with Christ, so that that is the direction that we are always pointed and can point others there as well.